Hey everybody, welcome to Painting for Pleasure. I got a piece that I did, a photograph that was sent to me, I believe it was sent to me, of the fires in Salinas, and I thought we'd try this today. The reason I wanted to try it is because it's similar to doing a very, very vibrant, bright sky, for instance a sunset or sunrise, but it's got some real pretty stuff going on in here, and this is all dark. It's a big lettuce field in Salinas, California, and this is when all of the fires were burning out in the mountains over there in that area. But just thought, you know, there's a town back here, and I just thought I'd give it a shot, see what happens. So we're just going to use this as a reference. Now I printed it out fairly large because it was a little tiny small photograph, and I needed to get it up bigger so that I could see what I was doing, which I did. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to wet the paper, because the sky I think can be done best if we just thoroughly saturated the paper with water. So I'm going to wet both the back side and the front side on this particular piece. So we're going to come up here, and I'm working the back side off the viewing screen right now, just wetting the back of the paper so I can keep it saturated, and we'll put all of this in view in a second. All right, so you can see what's happening. Okay. And we're going to just, again, thoroughly saturate the paper, both front and back. Now, I'm thoroughly saturating the paper to keep it wet longer, to keep the fibers in the paper wet longer, because I think this type of painting will lend itself to a real wet into wet sort of feel, wet into wet paper. All right, so that's just absolutely thoroughly saturated right now. You can probably start to see a little bit of highlight. It's buckling here and there. It'll sort of straighten out as we go forward. And the first thing I need to do is to sort of let it sit for a while. Let the paper just soak up all of the good stuff that I just put down there. And think about how I want to handle this in terms of colors. Do I want to throw color in there? Do I want to spray color in there? It's a lot of different variables, a lot of different ways in which we can approach this painting. So I'm looking at my reference material here, and I've got a nice, I want to say blue sky, purplish sky, it's nighttime. It's going to also be an interesting piece because it is nighttime, so it's going to be a way of painting a night scene. And it looks to me like, this has got to set, this has actually got to set for a bit, so I'm going to just lift this off and retape it down, stretch it out a bit. But initially what's happening inside here is it's nice and bright, so we're going to work from the brightest to the darkest in terms of doing this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to mix up a lot of light values, a lot of light colors. And in doing so, what I want to do is I want to show you what I'm doing here. Here's my palette right here, and I'm going to mix up some real bright colors on this right now. So we're going to come in here with a little bit of, I want to clean out my brush. My brush was not cleaned out. And let's get some nice bright colors. So we're going to start off with, see, this is my cadmium yellow. And I want this cadmium yellow because I'm gonna do it watery, but I want this cadmium yellow to start just flowing in here. You can see what I'm doing is I'm just sort of throwing the watery mixture in this area. Very watery mixture. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add a little bit of opera to this. Okay, so we're creating a pinkish, more sandy color. Let me bring a little bit more opera in. Excuse me. Drop my water. Okay. Let's just sort of pour this in here. Here you go. We're just going to let it go wherever it wants to go. My opera again, I'm sorry, excuse me. That's what I get for holding a palette up like that. When I've got... Let me put that water up here. And it's actually coming down into this area too, but I'm just going to sort of blot this out, try to lift this off a little bit more, because this is all going to be dark down here. The reason I'm doing it the way I'm doing it is because I want this to be as free-flowing as possible. So what I don't want to do is to get caught up with a lot of brush strokes. So it's very watery. I'm just, you know, we got a fire going on over there, so it's very, very, very watery. And I'm mixing a little bit of cerulean blue now with my opera. I want this to be a bright opera, but with a little bit of blue cast to it. So coming in here again, I'm just wetting this. I'm going to make some of it brighter, stronger. Here, for example, let's just take some heavy pigment. This is again, I'm going back to my bright cadmium yellow in this area, and I'm just sort of looking at my reference material to see what's happening. It looks like the fire is sort of moving that way. And lifting off some of this area down here. Coming in with, and I don't want to mix the yellow. Let that set up a bit. I don't want to mix my cadmium yellow with my blue because I'm going to get a green that I don't want right now. So I'm just wiping my palette. Just washing this all in. And again, I keep going back and patting this area down here where it's going to be darker. That's where my green's going to come in a little bit more. Let's see if we can pick up some cobalt blue. And mix it with my opera. Okay, see that? That's beautiful. Cobalt blue. Mixing it with my opera. Looks like there's a lot of stuff going on in here. And the same way with a lot of this is going to be darker. cobalt blue, opera. Let's get this in here. All right. There we go. Cobalt blue, opera. Yep. I'm going to get that, keep getting it darker. A lot of cobalt blue, more pigment, opera. Down in this area here, coming in over here. Good heavy cobalt blue in this area up here. A lot of pigment, cobalt blue and opera together. And cobalt, I keep going because this is the primary here. This is the colors that we're using, cobalt blue and opera. If you don't have opera, a little bit of alizarin crimson, just be very careful about the alizarin crimson that you're using because it can be more powerful. It can be much more powerful a color, and we don't want to. We don't want to get it to be too staining at this point in time. So we're getting some of this stuff that's going to be lighter down here. Okay. Not too concerned because all of this down here is going to be dark black. Going to end up with a combination of some interesting greens and dark greens and so forth to create almost a dark sky, darker area. But again, coming in here with some real strong colors. I may want to just, no, I don't think so. I was going to say I may want to do, I want to do this so that it light keeps it, doesn't get too muddy, it doesn't get too dark, too super dark right now. But I do want to get this sort of night sky look going on over here, and some of that over here. So I'm actually coming, in order to do that, I'm coming in from off the paper onto the paper. Okay. From off the paper onto the paper. Right? Coming in off the paper and coming on the paper. See that? That's my mountain over there. We need this is going to be a darker area and so forth over there. So what we're trying to do is to create this very interesting wet, watery area that'll allow the pigments just to flow into one another. And a lot of this is going to dissipate. You're going to see. You're going to see some of this just because it's super wet. And we'll just let it flow back a little bit. And again, it's fire. It's a sort of cloud stuff that's going on. It's very rich. Now what I just did is I picked up a little of my pyro red and I mixed it in with my cadmium yellow. And I'm looking at the sky here. And I'm looking at how all of this stuff flows. And we have I have a lot of this sweeping, fiery stuff going on in these areas here. There's some real bright, let's do it with a clean tissue, but there's some real light, bright, flaming areas in certain parts of this. Fire. Adding a little bit of burnt sienna to this mixture here to give it a little bit more deeper, intense feeling. It's a nice color for this. Some of the areas in the mountains are going to be a little bit more intense with some burnt sienna. Now what I'm doing also is I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt sienna with a little bit of my French ultramarine blue, because some of this is going to be even actually a little bit darker. Okay, and we want to emphasize that darkness in certain areas, not everywhere. One of the things that we also want to do is to make sure that we have a vibrancy in the sky, something that's not streaky, not brush strokey. Let me put it that way, not brush strokey, if that's the way to phrase it. The area down here is going to be also extremely wet, and we're going to end up taking some of our cadmium orange and mixing our cadmium orange a little bit with our cobalt blue. Well, I think not. I think not cobalt blue. Let me just start this again. That's going to be too olivey, and I don't want olive colored, and I don't want that. What I want to do is to create a dark, but the dark I want is a little bit different. So let's give this a try. Use cerulean blue. Now my paints right now, unfortunately, are pretty hard. So while this sets up, I'm going to end up putting some fresh paint in my paper, in my palette. All right, so let's come back and take a look at the piece that we're doing here. Again, coming back in over here, we want to bring in a little bit more of my cobalt blue mixture with my opera. I want this a little bit darker in this certain areas as we come down to the mountains. And again, you can still see that it's pretty wet. It's got to dry out, so we're going to end up probably helping that along a little bit more. But before I even do that, let's just get some nice pure opera color. Just not even mixing it, just coming in here and running a glaze of opera over the top of this, here and there. Okay. I want to come in here and do the same thing. Come down around this way. It looks pretty good to me. Take a little bit of bright stuff out of there. A little bit of brightness over here where this fires are burning. Let that all just set up, because this is the thing. What we have to do is we have to be patient and allow all of this stuff to work together. I want to do a little bit more. I'm going to take a little bit of this. Got some blue. I want to get a little bit more bluer in here, but I'm not sure I want to do too much with my cobalt blue. Maybe right at the ends, just take a little bit of this cobalt blue where it gets a little bit darker as the farther, because it's a night sky, so a little bit darker as the night goes, as it goes toward the edge of the paper. Just trying to get a movement in terms of value as well as color, warm to cool, light to dark. And I'm waiting for it to set up a bit so that I can spray it. Because what I want to do is create a starry feel, a starry pattern. I'm just cleaning up my water here, so just bear with me for a second. And we're going to have to, again, this is a matter of letting this set up, let it dry. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start my stuff down in this area here. Let's just get some, let me get in here and get some fresher water. So my dark down in this area here has got to be somewhat green. It's going to be green, and it's going to be green dark. It's going to be green, but it's going to be at night. It's actually what it is it's a lettuce field. So I'm putting in just putting in a base value in this, and as I come down, I'm gonna get darker, and it's gonna get a little bit lighter. What I've done is I've taken a bit of my new gamboge now, and I'm running the new gamboge in here to lighten it up, and then I'm just going to take water This is my underpainting. I'm going to be working dark on top of this, but I just need to get this some of the feeling of some nice lettuce color in this. So some of it's going to be green, some of it's going to be a brighter green. Right, the rose and so forth. And you notice I'm leaving all of this. I'll fix all of this stuff over here later, but I just want to get this base in. And I'm going to start to get even darker than that. So we're going to come in here and we're going to mix a nice dark color, my French ultramarine blue, along with my new gamboge, will give me this sort of interesting, we're going to get darker green out here. And it's wet. Okay. And as I come across this side, it's going to change up and into a color so you can see what's happening. Nice and dark. Some people don't like dark work. You know, I have a lot of people have suggested that it's too dark and it gets too muddy, but you can keep it from doing that. You can keep the dark. You can get the nice rich darks in here without getting super muddy on this stuff. Okay. So the actual lettuce field is coming down at an angle. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm bringing in some of my burnt sienna. Over this side, we're actually going to get even much more interesting in that we're going to get, I'm going to get it even a little darker than that. So again, new gamboge, along with my French ultramarine blue. Now, you remember the paper was wet. The pigment is a little bit more pigment than water in this case, so that the pigment doesn't just dissipate. It just doesn't go off. It has, you know, we're trying to get this thing so that it's dark. We want it to be dark, but we don't want it necessarily to be, we want it to be a little bit loose as we approach this, so that we get the feeling that it's a row of planted material. All right, so I'm trying to leave a row of lighter material. Theoretically, it's all lettuce. And it's, again, these are just constant mixtures of French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, green field. All right. we're going to end up putting even darker material in here, darker pigment in here. But pretty much right now, where I'm going with this stuff is just, I keep going back in with my burnt sienna and my French ultramarine blue combination. Slight angle. All right, slight angle. Okay, so let that, again, this is all nice and wet. We're going to let it set up. And then I'll put my real light areas in, lift some of this stuff out, and hopefully we'll have a nice painting. But we're going to have to let this set for a bit, so sit down and relax for 5 minutes. Okay, while we're continuing to watch and wait for this all to set up, I'm going to come in here, just take and wash a lot of this, see if I can wash a lot of this stuff off. This stains the board, which I don't have too much of a problem with, but I probably should try to keep it from staining. Let's see what happens. The best way to do this is these boards are they're great to work with. But you probably should coat them so that you don't get this stuff doesn't go into the actual board itself. Let's lift out a real. Let me see if this is dry enough. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to take this brush. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to form a little round edge. Here you go. You can see that what I did there. And I'm going to lift out a star. Nope. Sorry, it slid down. Well, so much for lifting out that star. We'll just try it again. Let me see if I can get this. Get this back. With my smaller brush. Don't want to necessarily do that. We'll try it once again, and this time hopefully I won't slip out. Won't slip up. Let's see it. So I'll use this one here. It's a little bit of a. So I'm taking my tissue. It works better with paper towels because the paper towel won't rip. It's a little bit more durable. Okay, so let's just come over here and press down, hold that into, right? So we'll lift out a light star right there. And we're going to do some lifting of some of this stuff over here too, because we need to get some light areas. All right, so let's start to build. Let's start to build this a little bit more. I have sort of a glow in here. What I'm doing is just taking cobalt blue. You know, and you know when I lifted this all out, and I'm just sort of putting in some cobalt blue in here. Okay, let's get our dark. A lot of heavy brown and blue, my French ultramarine blue. So we're getting some real dark, a lot of pigment. And drop some in there. We'll actually get that even darker. Okay, so we have opera French ultramarine. Here we go. A little bit of my opera French ultramarine blue. We want to come in here and define. I want to define this mountain area a little bit more. A little darker. Down into the ground. And it's going to be, we're going to end up doing some dark areas between some of these areas over here. This is another of my hills and mountains that are back here. Okay, and I'm going to change up the color a little bit, maybe go to a little bit more redder brown in these areas here. Going background, a little bit orangey, more orange in terms of, I mean, this is, all right. What I'm trying to do is to change up the value and the color. Alright, change up the value and the color in certain areas. Okay, so some of this is going to be lighter, whiter, more vibrant. More glow-like. Red sienna is a good color for this. It really is. Okay, am I heading away? I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me get back here. Creating some dark areas. Some light areas. The town is lit up. It's close, on fire. Whatever, I guess it's the town back there. Now these shapes are just, again, arbitrary shapes. They're not meant to be anything other than to just give you the indication that there's something that's going on back there. Whoopsie daisy. Wow, that's a lot of paint. Here we go. some of this is just glowing. Okay, it really is. Some of it just absolutely glowing. A little bit more red. I'm going to use a little bit more red in these areas. Changing up a little bit here and there. And you can see it's starting to set up a bit. Starting to lighten up too a little bit. May have to put a little bit more interesting values in there. What we want to do is give this, we got this right here, which is nice. Some more definition. Okay. What am I doing? I'm just coming over here and taking my brush and turning it, just clear water. I want to try to just create this illusion of lettuce, a lettuce field, or I guess it's a lettuce field. There are some bright spots in this. Okay. A few bright areas. A little tissue. Okay. Little water, little tissue. Little water to brighten up. Now the reason I'm using this tissue is because the patterns in the lettuce field are just random almost. You know, so you don't want to get even patterns. You want to get some that are looking. The tissue does a good job because it creates interesting patterns that are asymmetrical. They're not symmetrical patterns. So here we're going to throw some water in here, and see what I'm talking about? It's just lifting this up a little bit. And we're creating the illusion of just leafy structure. Little water. throw some, just see what happens with a little bit of water. Let it spot up a bit. So you got some nice bright areas. And then with a little bit more pigment, still dark, but you don't want to get too much. So we're going to still work on dark, the real dark stuff over here. We're still looking at creating some real strong darks. I don't want to pop this up into, I want this to be sort of straight across. Nice and dark. Again, French ultramarine blue. I suppose we could use a little bit of alizarin crimson in there too. Get some of that nice reddish, dark reddish look. As this dries, I mean, it's nice and dark over there. I put a little bit of, I want to just soften this up a bit. I think this is pretty darn good, working out pretty good. Hopefully it is. However, we have to wait until it absolutely dries for me to determine whether or not it actually did. All right. Get some of that French ultramarine blue in here. Darken that up back there. It's a night sky. It's a night sky, and it's looks like it's pretty good. We have all this. I'm going to come in here with my brush now and see if I can form a few more light areas, light patterned areas. Here and there. soften that up a bit. A few bright areas. Just take opera, and let's make a little bit, a few more dark areas with just my combination of cobalt blue and opera. We're just going to bring this in here and allow that to work its magic as well. What I'm doing is I'm coming in here and just using my cobalt blue to darken up some of the small brush I'm working with here, just to darken up some of the areas. Get a little bit broader, a little bit wider brush. So this is cobalt blue, and I'm sort of running a little bit of a glaze, I guess, if you want to call it that, just over the areas that I want a little bit darker. Maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue as well in that. A little bit of cobalt blue and French ultramarine blue. All right. Same way with down in this area here. We may want it a little bit darker right in this area here. So we're going to do that, and then take a little bit of water and just soften the edge. So it's cool to have hard edges, but you need hard edges and soft edges as well. I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. all this area here. I'm going to let it just set now. I want to let it set and then just get back in here and maybe do some tiny calligraphy work once it dries. So as that's setting, maybe what I'll do is come in here with my see if I can do this. Add a little bit of water. A little water here and there to get that star to sparkle a little bit. See what happens. You can always fill it in. You can always do that. Nice bright areas, certain areas here. That's good, that's good. Let's get a little red on this mountain here. Okay. Let's work on my darks with my calligraphy. Small brush. Buildings over here. But we want to make sure that it's not too much water, a lot of pigment. And spreading out a bit. Let's get some not quite as dark as I want. We'll define this area, I think, a little bit more. Hills are alive with fire. It's burning. Just taking a little bit of water, putting it in here, and trying to create, there you go, that sort of upward draft of a flame. Dark. We need this dark. We don't want it muddy. Remember, we're not looking for mud. We're looking for something that's nice and dark. And we're hoping actually that this works to our benefit. I mean, I want to get it, I don't want this thing to be hard lined here. We want lettuce, but we don't want, I'm going to go back and take some tissue. And create my lettuce field again. We need this dark, remember. Okay, and then with a little bit of, again, water, we're going to lift. Trying a little bit of scumbling too is what I'm doing. Okay, everybody, I think basically, excuse me, we've pretty much completed our piece. This is the fires of Salinas. Nice, vibrant sky, warm sky. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff over here is just very nice, and it goes into this nice warms and then colds as it goes off. Early evening, nighttime kind of feel. And I think it works out pretty good. Try to keep this nice and fresh. So that's it for now, everybody. I appreciate you being with me. I'm your host, Tony Visco. If you want to see any of my work, you can go over to www.panthonyvisco.com. I've got probably about 300 paintings that are up there. You can join me for classes. Just sign up. Go to paintingforpleasure.net and you can sign up for watercolor classes if you'd like. I do online watercolor classes on Wednesday mornings, so you're welcome to join me with that. And of course, the Plymouth Center for the Arts is also teaching. They're live now, so I'm teaching live down there, and I've got about 3 or 4 classes going down there. So just call the center if you want to come in live and sign up. So that's it for now. Appreciate you being with me. See you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.